we get this Superman, then you're on your own.
You are, and you're...
Yeah. I'm Batman.
Doesn't mean anything.
So
Whatever.
But
Okay.
back to what I was saying though is yes, I had asked Will. I said, don't tell me the full storyline, and he didn't. I said, but he's like,
No,
there's
but
one thing.
You ruined the one thing, Will.
I don't
that
care.
I
I don't care.
wish he didn't see coming.
I don't care about that.
You led him right into George Clooney.
I
was-
asked him to. I said don't worry about it.
Why?
I don't care. I don't care. But the fact, like, you're supposed to watch that movie and feel the exact same way that Ezra Miller felt when he said that line.
When I
With Titans. Before I even knew about
I
it.
told you about it though, because whatever. That was an homage, not some like big secret ending, big reveal. It was just funny.
But to my original point though, is the biggest thing that Will was sharing with me about is the graphics, which we talked about at length throughout the film when we went together to see the movie, is the special effects in this movie were awful.
really
They were
bad.
horrendous.
It was bad.
They were
It was so
bad.
bad. It was
Like you
so
told me that it
bad.
opens up with
Yes.
Ezra Miller trying to do this like Flash, really flat, like Quicksilver thing, and oh my, the dog is the worst part. The dog was awful.
My all-time favorite part of watching the movie with you, Chuck, was when you told me, like, right off the bat when we saw the baby shower and you saw the dog come out. You're like, this is the worst thing. Like, I can't believe it. Like, everything else I can forgive, but this stupid dog I can't stand. And I'm laughing because I know that at the end of the movie, the end credits is just the dog.
Just
The
the
dog.
dog.
So
Just
when it
the
happened
dog.
again, I just sat there laughing hysterically in the theater, and you were just cringing the entire
It
time.
was so bad.
So my
I wasn't
first-
laughing
even
'cause I liked it. I'm just laughing because you didn't.
right. And like you even said, like when Flash is out doing his Flashpoint thing and he's running and you see all the stuff,
Yeah.
everything was CG. It looks so bad.
It was really
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
It was
What's the
really,
movie,
really
Chronosphere?
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my first time watching this movie, when we get to the babies that look fake, look dead,
When we
I
get
don't
to the
know.
babies, that's the beginning of the
Yes.
movie.
Well, okay,
Almost
fine.
immediately.
The movie opens up and my mouth is immediately agape. I could not take anything else I saw seriously my first viewing through this. That was all my mind did. Was I just picked
Yeah.
apart all the special effects that were in this film, all the ridiculous CGI, and it was just why? For what purpose? For what reason was it looking this bad? I mean, this guy, Andy Muschietti, he did It Part 1 and 2, two movies that look fabulous. Regardless of how you feel about horror movies, regardless how you feel about the story of It, they both look incredible. And
Yeah.
for him to follow those two movies up, and now we see this, something is amiss. Something is not right. I shared this with Lee. I kind of loosely shared this with Chuck. I have a wild tinfoil hat theory that this was done on purpose. It had to have been.
Yeah.
Forget about this DC. Forget about Ezra Miller. Forget about what Zack Snyder brought to the table. Forget all of that. We are moving in a different direction. Oh, be sure to look out for whatever James Gunn is going to do. That's what this movie screams to me. And another thing, and I'm going to throw it to you two, and you two can, go off. But I also said to Chuck, because I didn't know how I felt about the plot yet, if the plot of the movie, if the story is a 7, which it isn't, if the story is a 7, the CG brings this movie down to about a 4. It's that jarring. It takes you out of
Right.
everything that is happening in this movie. I don't understand.
And that's the thing too, is this movie for me, first of all, a movie of this caliber, at this level that we're at now with DC and Marvel, we should not be having conversation about the graphics. It should be the last thing we're talking about, because of how everything is going in the tech world today, and special effects. But if this movie should be a 7 and it's a 4 with the special effects, for me this movie would be a 6, and it brings it down. But if the special effects were actually on par up, it would bring it up to an 8, because then it would actually be really, really good.
Yeah.
Because the overall plot of this story, like tying into Man of Steel, I thought was really cool.
It's halfway decent.
We're in
The story
another
is actually
universe.
halfway decent. I will say that. The story is really good.
And there was parts of, like, when they brought General Zod on, even there were times where it looked okay, but then there were times like General Zod looked half as put together in this movie than he did in Man of Steel. He looked better in Man of Steel than he did here.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
tried
here
to still
here
do the
he doesn't
same
even
thing.
really take off his visor in this movie, does he? Like, you always see him
not
behind. You
once.
always see his face behind the visor, and it was Michael Shannon. Like, he actually came back and did this. It wasn't all CG for him, but it looked.
Right.
It still looked bad.
Right. And there was the part too where you see all these universes coming together, and you see Christopher Reeve.
You not only see Christopher
So
Reeve.
that would
You not
see
only
Nicholas-
you see Helen Slater. That's another thing that I want to talk about. Who was this movie made for? The Easter eggs in this movie is going to fall on so many deaf ears. The poster of Raquel Welch
who
in
Helen
his
Slater
in his room.
The Shawshank scene.
Really a Shawshank
I
nod?
I thought that was just him being a nerd.
Okay, but sure.
But to your point though, out of all the Superman universes, they bring in. I think there was a quick clip of George Reeves.
Yes.
There was Christopher Reeve, and then
yes.
there was Nick Cage. Which
Yeah.
They even had to do a whole battle scene in there with him flying around and shooting lasers.
That was just for Kevin Smith. That was just to make him happy.
Yeah.
Right, and to make Lee happy, because Lee has always wanted to go to a different universe.
Like I've told both of you, you know what? If that's all I get, that's all I'm gonna get. I'm happy with it. I'm fine.
But the CG on it looked horrible.
It
The
did.
CG looked.
It did,
looked bad.
but it was.
It looked bad. It looked really bad. I
And
can
they
swallow.
had so many other universes to take in that they could have used clips from. They could have used Dean Cain and Lois and Clark. They could have used this new guy that's Superman on WB. They could have on CW. They could have used Superboy would have been, especially introducing Supergirl. Superboy they could have used.
The whole
all of these.
And they could have used real footage too.
They absolutely could have
like
used
they
real
did with
footage.
Christopher Reeve.
No, Christopher Reeve, that was CG, 100%.
Yeah,
That was
so-
100% CG. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I finally understand. I finally understand where you're coming from, Lee, when you talk about the eyes in CG. How this movie managed to make how this movie actually managed to make Christopher Reeve look soulless. I mean, absolutely devoid of any human emotion at all. Just that it sank my heart. I don't understand the thinking behind that at all. And I'm also wondering again who this movie was made for, because like I said, Helen Slater, Supergirl, 1984 Supergirl, standing right next to him. Who has seen that movie that is going to see this thing in 2023? Who is that
TV
for?
TV show
No, it was a movie.
and a TV show.
It was a TV show as well. With
That
her.
was
I believe so too.
That's
I don't believe
insane.
that.
I don't
think it
see
was
that
a
at
movie
all.
with her.
All I know is the 84 movie. I don't know anything about the show if she was even on one. But the point is, like, yes, Christopher Reeve, he's synonymous with the role of Superman. Those first 2-3 movies were massive successes. Supergirl from 1984 that bombed, that no one knows about. Why is she
We know
there?
about it.
Sure, fine.
Because we know about it. That's why.
So just the
See,
geeks.
I know Helen Slater from. I know Helen Slater from The Secret of My Success.
Okay.
Do you remember that movie?
No.
Or Michael J. Fox pretends to work at a place, and then just like gets the job. He basically pulls a George Costanza, where George just sits in the office and gets the Penske file.
I
Yeah,
guess
it's-
I guess so.
yeah.
And speaking of
She was
Michael
the
J.
love
Fox, an Eric Stoltz reference.
So I will say this: they kept on going with that way too long.
Way too long.
Drop it, Marty McThigh. That's not your thigh, and it's upside down. That was funny, and that could have been the only part, but they did it like over. It seemed like it went on for 10 minutes. I know it didn't. It was probably only like 30 seconds worth of dialogue, but the fact that they brought it up, then they like kept talking about
Kept
it, and then
going.
they brought it up again, and in the next scene,
Kept
and
going
went
with it.
further with it. And
Kept
I'm
go-
like, okay,
so
get over
much-
it. We all know that Stoltz was Marty first. We get it.
It was so much
It wasn't
so.
the first choice, but
It was so much so that it makes me question Barry Allen's intelligence. That should have been
Exactly.
the first clue that something is very, very wrong. Where they're in the opening part of where he's in a different universe, and that version says, "Oh, yeah, Eric Stoltz, you're not in your past. You're in a completely different universe." And he still continuously thinks he's in his past. Like, after that point, wow. And then the bunch of potheads in the apartment all keep going about Eric, and then it finally dawns on him.
yeah.
Ooh.
Oh.
I will say something while we're on the whole Back to the Future thing. When they're talking about the importance of this Barry getting struck by lightning again, if you notice the score, it's very reminiscent of Alan Silvestri's score for Back to the Future.
Yeah.
They purposely did that when he's talking about like you have to get struck by lightning. If you don't, then this doesn't happen. It's like, oh, they did a really good job tying in music from different things that they were talking.
Well,
about.
I
Obviously,
forget which.
bringing in Danny Elfman stuff for the Batman '89,
Mhm.
but I like how they did it here.
Yeah.
And I forget which line it was, but they actually stole a line from Back to the Future and
yeah.
made Barry Allen say it.
He's like, you have to be Back to the Future or something. Like there were a lot of things that were it wasn't direct. When you said that was word for word, I'm like, it was
It was
the
close
gist.
enough.
It's the gist. It was not
Right.
word for word.
My
Yeah.
funniest nod was the Big Lebowski. That for me was the funniest part when you're introduced to Michael Keaton,
Yeah.
and he is the Big Lebowski. You're like, he's got the same beard, same hair, same
He's the
sandals,
dude.
same.
I think the
He
reality
is the dude.
when you're just a shut-in and you stop cutting your beard and your hair, and you want to be cozy, you dress like that.
Yeah.
I
So
think it would have been
does
funny
happen
if Batman,
all the time.
if he came in, if he's like he wanted revenge because General Zod stole his carpet, his rug. I want my rug back.
Mm.
That would have
Okay.
just made.
Yeah, well, General Zod's not a Chinaman.
Unbelievable.
But there were. I actually think that when they brought the same Batcave, I loved that.
Yeah,
Same
they
Batcave.
recreated it. Yeah,
I loved that.
Really
Same
good job.
Batmobile. I
Mm.
loved that.
yeah,
I will-
let's,
well, you
I'll
brought up Batmobile. The one thing I didn't like about the Batmobile is that they showed it from a funky angle, and it looked really weird. Like there was a couple of shots where it's like, "Oh, I've never seen that Batmobile from that angle," and it just didn't look as cool as it used to.
The Batwing, though, as like a gyroscope thing, that's never been introduced. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, that was a whole new
That to
Batwing.
me was really cool.
this is Keaton kills it in this movie. I will
He
say
was the best part of the
that.
movie.
He's by
Everything about
far he's the
Keaton-
best part of the movie.
Oh yeah, and they did a really good job with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I really want to touch upon Keaton for a little bit here.
Yep.
So, I mean, the way they introduced him, I thought it was great. When he shaved his beard and everything, and he's talking, I felt like he didn't skip a beat. Like he went right back to the same Bruce Wayne that he was back 30 years ago.
Yes.
And it was spot on. And I
Spot
was
on.
like, when he said something about his parents, like I heard him say, "You killed my parents." Like I heard him talking just like he did. Like his voice didn't sound any different. Same inflection when he said his parents, when he brought it up.
Yeah.
Like the emotion was there. And like, you see Michael Keaton and stuff, and he's always kind of like gruff, and that's how he's been in the last few things we've seen him in for the past 20 years or so. But
Mhm.
here, it was like nothing changed. I was so
Didn't skip a
happy.
beat.
It was
And when he
perfect.
has that fight scene,
Oh, dude, the fight scenes with him were great. I mean, obviously
Yes.
he had a stand-in,
Yeah.
but I mean, But you know, what one thing I did hear was I guess he was talking to the costume designer again and saying, "Hey, one thing I really hate about this is the fact that I couldn't turn my head." And she's like, "Yeah, well, if they said if it looks good on camera, it's probably not comfortable." So she was just like, "Too bad. Like, sorry, you're gonna have to deal with it 'cause it looks really good."
Yeah.
So he still had to deal with it again. But then again, he wasn't the one fighting; he was just acting in it. But the one thing which I know we would have gotten to anyway, but I did have here is the whole "I'm Batman." Okay, good.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff he said, let's go do it or whatever, awesome. But when he says, and I know you know where I'm going here,
Yeah.
you want to get nuts, let's get nuts.
Overkill.
Let's get nuts.
So
It's overkill.
it's overkill. If he said you want to get nuts, come on, let's get nuts. Okay, that would have been more overkill, but no, just one part of the line. If he just said, let's get nuts, I'd be fine with that. I would be totally fine with that. But do you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. I'm like, okay, you went too far. We all love that line. Now you're just doing it because you want to say your lines again. Or, I mean, because they wanted him to say his lines again. So
I'm fine with it.
I'm with Lee. I think it's
Will
overkill.
said, it's just overkill. It wasn't even fan service. Like I felt belittled in a way. Like I don't know how else to put it. Like I felt, yeah. It's like I love that line. All of us who know that movie well and love that movie. I feel like they were just saying like you're stupid and you just here like here take this, eat this. Oh yeah, you like that? Oh okay, here's some more. Like no, don't do that anymore. But the one thing that was really great, and it was just like as they're going through everything, we see this when he gets like when he's dying, he's like bleeding out of his suit after like dealing with that giant. There's that one line where Barry says, "We can't bring you back, can we?" And he says, "You already did."
Okay, listen.
That was clearly like on. I don't
I-
care how much of a fourth wall break that might have been teetering on. I loved it. I thought it was great.
No, you nailed it. It was strictly for the fourth wall break. I hate that. I hated that when it happened. Here's why. They tried to shoehorn this relationship in and immediately make you feel like, oh, Peter Parker, Tony Stark. You guys like that, didn't you? Well, here's Barry and Batman. It's like, no, you spent a half an hour with this man tops, and now you're like cradling him as he dies, and he's like, you already did bring me back. Like, no, none of that was warranted in this movie at all. They did not spend any amount of time building up to that moment. That emotional gut punch that was supposed to be there fell completely flat for me because it was like, why? For what? Why? For what reason? What do we? I don't know. I did not like that. I did not.
Hey everybody, Lee from Black and White Reviews here. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you for tuning in, checking out our conversation. If you like this discussion and you want to hear more about this specific subject or other things, check us out on our podcasting sites, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, or Google Podcasts. We're up on pretty much all of them. So yeah, thanks again for popping by, and be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.